Nice to be up, obviously, after MasterCard and Priceless, and no videos from me. Amazing videos we've just had there. I'm going to stick with slides and give you 10 minutes. It's great to be here. Thank you for taking the time to attend. I'm John Myers. I'm the Managing Director and VP of Marin Software here in EMEA. And I guess I'm first up of the speakers before we obviously move on to the fireside chat and the panel. The things which I wanted to talk to you guys about is very much search and social. So we as a business and how we position ourselves and the things that we do is we position and bring marketing channels together. And we have huge amounts of data and huge performance criteria that allow us to run and optimize for your clients' campaigns. But ultimately, at the same time, we aggregate and we understand the data. And what I wanted to do today was share some data and some thoughts with you and maybe get you guys as search marketers and social marketers out there thinking more and more about how we can bring things together. So today is very much about integration and how to drive revenue via search and social. First of all, I wanted to talk about partnerships because there's lots of notable partnerships out there when you think back over the years. I mean, I threw some examples on here as an Englishman. I have to throw David Beckham up there ahead of, obviously, Prince William and Kate, because obviously Beckham's an institution, and with his lovely wife Victoria, and we thought it might be good to throw somebody like Torval and Dean in there, because we appreciate in ice skating, we never seem to win anything, and that was the last time many, many years ago now. But I think what we want to coin and what we want to gain from today, if anything, is this. I mean, I should have maybe wrote it on my hands and put search and social, but I'm going to do this a little bit, and we're going to think about it. We really want to understand how search and social marry together and come together in unison, because the combination is extremely powerful. So for the next 8 minutes, my job is to convince you, if you are not doing this, to start doing this. And I'm not just talking about the hand thing. I'm talking about bringing search and social together to understand ultimately how it can benefit your marketing streams. So let's start with numbers. I mean, we're going to talk about Google. We're going to talk about Facebook. I mean, they are both hugely dominant on a global basis in this space. And when you start to see some of these numbers and we talk about thinking about bringing search and social together, here's 3 very, very key criteria as to why you should do that. I mean, rapid and continuous growth. I mean, we've seen phenomenal gains from these 2 businesses on the global level. Not only in the European and EMEA markets, obviously in the US and APAC and all around the world, to the point now where 50% of total media budgets and 50% of marketers will increase their spends in these areas. I mean, I can remember starting out, and I worked in media network agencies, and going back 14, 15 years when search first came to the table, nobody knew what it was. Nobody knew as a media planner what to do with it, and they kind of parked it to one side and went, I don't understand this, leave it over here and forget about it. So in that period of time, heavily driven by Google and obviously other areas like Bing and Yahoo and those companies, we've seen phenomenal growth. I mean, to the point now where there's 6 billion Google searches a day. 6 billion. Obviously, all of that is, monetized ads, organic ads, placements, shopping listings. There's a whole manner of things going on. And obviously, Facebook now is at a point where they can talk about the 1 billion users that they actively have using the platform. So huge growth, hugely powerful combinations. I think if I get the numbers right in my head, search has grown 16% year on year on a global basis. Facebook's grown social 26% year on year. So again, growing areas. And now we're in a point where I said, obviously, media planners didn't know what to do with it in some respects, where marketers say that these are probably the 1 and 2 ROI factors that they will use to drive, outside of obviously all of the other concepts of marketing and awareness and branding from an ROI perspective, because ultimately things tend to result in a final play as a search on Google or a social play. These 2 channels are extremely ROI orientated and very, very critical to the cross-channel matrix. So we think about them from an ROI perspective, and we think about them as last click wins. That's kind of a scenario which we see a lot in digital marketing. We look at path to conversion, and ultimately a lot of people work on the last click metric. Could be ultimately, in a lot of cases, a brand search on Google. What we need to think about is obviously how they assist as well. And obviously I'll come on to more data in this piece, but we see that social is much more likely to assist. This is actually a data, it's a tool from Google. Rather than our data, I'll share some data from ourselves later on. But we saw that and they saw that ultimately that in every click that occurs from a social conversion, there will be 2 assist clicks as well in social. So social is not just something you should think about in the context of, does it actually ultimately deliver the lead? Well, actually it does, but it also assists through the process. Search lesser so, as you can see, paid, it's a one-on-one ratio basis. Obviously in the paid model, there'll be lots of different combinations of keywords driving through to ultimately conversion, but as we can see, it's a one-on-one. So social is really driving search. So if you start to think more about search and social, let's not think about them in silos. We know that we live in a hugely fragmented world. It's not as easy as it used to be for marketers. You know, people used to go on search engines, do a quick search, make a decision, go through on the process. It might be a price-driven click. It might be because it's a brand affinity and they relate to the brand and they go with the brand. Ultimately, because now we have all of these different social outlets, I mean, I'm not just talking about Facebook, we have Twitter that influences things, we have Pinterest that influences things. What's quite interesting for us as a business when we see Pinterest data is we see Pinterest driving huge amounts of traffic in retail, massive amounts of traffic in retail, sometimes more traffic than any other acquisition channel, because people want to experience and view and see the product. It might be luxury handbags or clothing or things like that. So actually, if you're not thinking about Pinterest as well, there is some really clever stuff to be done there. And people jump around those channels. People search on Google, they go out to Facebook, they converse their opinions on Twitter, they bring it together in imagery in Pinterest, ultimately before they even arrive at a sale point. And we're not talking about just 2 or 3 conversion points. We're talking it could be 10, it could be 15. I think we saw one in the region of 137 once. Somebody was clearly having a long think about the consideration of that purchase. But what we do see, and what we're seeing again, is, and we marry the Google data, is that we're seeing that huge amounts of revenue, up to 47% of purchases are made in more than one day. 65% come from more than one step. So the hit point of just actually that person searching or that person seeing something on social, if you're not backing up and following up, and I won't steal some of the other speakers' thunders, but obviously, going across the retargeting piece and making sure that you're making the awareness clear if they haven't converted initially, you really are going to miss out in the modern digital world of marketing, because people really are jumping around the process to try and understand exactly what's going on before they make that purchase. Purely because we, as marketers, have given them so much choice to choose from, and so many considerations and prices and reviews and things to look at. So again, the world is becoming a very fragmented and complicated place to work in. So thinking about how it can be driven together, we've seen huge amounts of studies out there, because at the end of the day, I don't want to just stand here and, as a Marin employee, and say, hey, here's some Marin data, you need to do this. There's lots of notable brands out there, from obviously Group M and Comscore and Business.com, have all analyzed this over the last period of 18 months to understand what are they seeing across their client bases. And obviously it's a nice split, because you have Group M, one of the largest media network companies out there in the world today, huge amounts of brands in many countries, Comscore from an analytical point of view, and then ultimately Business.com, all saying that actually when you look at how search and social work together and come together in unison, the uptick in performance is huge. I obviously don't want to read down all of the numbers, and I'm sure you guys are already, but it paints a very, very positive position to argue the story in some respects. So when we saw this, we thought as a business, hey, let's take all of our data and let's aggregate it. I mean, as I say, the platform, we plug in APIs with Facebook and Google and Microsoft and Bing and Yandex now, Baidu and all those different companies. So we can aggregate everything together. So we have a huge amount of data. We have a huge amount of cross-client data on a global basis. So what we did is we took around about 300 of our global customers that are working on search and social and aggregated the data to look at it, to give us an overall picture. And what we saw very much mirrored what I'm talking about and what we saw from Group M, which is good, which is a tick. Otherwise, I'm just shot myself for the last 8 minutes. As you can see, and the basis of what we looked at this on was we looked at it on effectively click-through rate, a conversion rate as such, and we looked on what we call RPC, revenue per click. As you can see from the little happy smiling faces, Facebook alone, from our data point of view, we saw less than $1 of revenue per click for every dollar spent. right through to the other side of the fence. And as I say, we're very tight on time. I won't dwell too much on it. But Google with Facebook, with Bing in the click process, we saw a huge RPC, literally, 3.5x what the RPC of Facebook alone is. So for effectively a $3.16 RPS. So we know for a fact, bringing the channels together and the exposure of people in social moving into search or in search moving into social drives huge effects and huge performance uplifts rather than just unison of message. And just for the final slide in my 10-minute sprint to arrive at this point, just to share some data with you and show you what we saw from as our client base. The blue is the isolated process, so looking at the revenue per click from an isolated point of view, and then the revenue per conversion. And as we can see in both areas, there are huge step changes in revenue per conversion on the basis of, if we just run an isolation, around about $25, up to $42 if you combine the two processes and actually bring the whole thing together. So I can't stress enough to you guys as marketers out there, by throwing a quick 10 minutes of data at you. Obviously, we'll come on to debate this more in the world of fragmented media as we come into the panel after the speakers, and we'll talk more about, obviously, other channels as well. As a starting point to start to tell the story today, bringing search and social together and thinking about that partnership. If you're not doing it as it stands, please consider it. Please think about how you do that. Also, don't just think about it from a marketing channel point of view. Think about it from your team's point of view. And if your search team isn't with the social team and they're not talking to each other, bring them together. You will see hugely powerful results. At least that's what we see in the data. We're data guys and marketing guys, and we very much recommend going that way with it. So thank you for your time. I look forward to the panel and the debate, and well, let's get on from here with the next speakers. Also, if you want, pick that up. We've got a stand out there with the stuff on there. You can come to our stand and we can give you white papers and stuff on this. But thanks very much for your time. Thank you.